Okay. My mother, stop it, mother, Simma, Richmond, was born about 1890, so, and she was the youngest of a family of five or six, I don't even really know. She had one sister and two or three brothers. At the age, and she was born in the Ukraine, in Kamenets-Podilsk region, and it was a small city, but it attained some prominence by the fact that it had a bazaar, a fair, every year. So many people came from different sections of Russia, and so they had some communication with the outside world. Unfortunately, her mother and father died when she was 3 months old from an epidemic, and all her other siblings were a little older, and it fell most heavily on her. But fortunately, she had a very loving grandmother named Sarah, who herself had no means of subsistence and had to rely on the other members of the other family, like aunts and uncles of the children, to help them out. And but she was very loving towards my mother and the other sister, who was slightly older than herself. The boys were already a little older and were probably apprenticed as jewelry people. There was a lot of watchmakers and jewelers in the family. So they probably were apprenticed as that and were probably making a little money.
Is that what Richmond comes from?
Yeah. Maybe, I mean, from jewelry.
Yeah, like rich and
yeah, maybe,
gold.
maybe. And then, of course, you know, she never felt a mother's love, and this influenced mother's or father's love, and this influenced her a great deal, and she had very little schooling. They only saw to it that she learned by rote the prayers that a Jewish woman should know, but beyond that, very little. And her clothes consisted of hand-me-downs from the rest of the family and so forth. And so this sister, Deborah, in America she was called Dora, Aunt Dora, and so they eloped to the United States, into London, and they stayed there for about a year. And Faye was born in London. And
wait.
yeah.
Who else?
My mother's sister,
okay.
A little older sister, about 2 or 3 years older than her. So she eloped with this man. Now, close it for a minute, I want to think. With this young man, David Hoffman, Uncle David. And they were there for a little more than a year, and Faye was born in England. And somehow they couldn't make it economically, so they somehow managed to come to the United States. And he got some work as a tailor. And in a short while, my mother had a fantasy about America, you know, and she asked her sister whether she could come. How they managed to accumulate some money for her to come, I don't know. But it was a very tragic leave-taking of her grandmother, to whom she was very much attached. But she was 16. When you're 16, you do things like that. You want to see the world. So she came on a boat, steerage, And she was seasick from the minute she set foot on the boat until she came off. And she couldn't eat anything, she used to tell us. And at one time, a nurse came down, and she was too young to even go by herself. So some friends said they would sort of say that she was a relative or something, and she was attached to them. But they never came around to see how she was or anything after she got on the boat. So one time a nurse came down to the steerage, and she saw my mother's condition, and she said, if you don't eat anything, I'm going to throw you overboard. So my mother managed, all they had to eat was a piece of herring and some onions, and she managed to eat something, and she survived, and she came to her sister, and her sister was living in extreme poverty, and she had this child, and then she had another child, a son. And my mother went to work in a factory also as an unskilled worker, just basting, doing some basting there on clothes. And she made $3 a week, which she contributed to the family because they were in dire need. And she never had any clothes or anything herself, and barely managed to survive.
Who? What do you say?
She barely managed to survive, and she was very pretty, and there were, she used to tell us there were young men in the neighborhood who saw her going to work or coming back, and they came up and tried to talk to her or ask her for a date, and she was so ashamed that she had no clothes that she didn't want to go out with them. So one time, my father somehow heard about her, and he came up, and he was making the big salary of $7 a week because he was a skilled tailor. He had been apprenticed at the age of about 10 to a tailor, and he learned how to make clothes. And he had about a similar history. He was also born in Russia, a little bit to the north of the Ukraine, in what is called Belmaker region, Gubernia's was a region, and there were 4 brothers, and the father died very early of asthma. As far as I can, he must have gotten a cold on top of the asthma or something. Very few doctors, and couldn't afford doctors and so forth. And he used to tell us that they had a little house, about a 1-room house, and they all lived there and they had an earthen floor, had no flooring and all that. But one by one, his brothers came to the United States, and at one of these trips, my grandmother, their mother, came with them. So she was in the United States.
What was her name?
Her name was Bela. And the name really was Glackman, Glachman.
Meaning? Do you know the meaning?
It could mean straight man.
Straight?
Glach means straight man. And my father used to say that his father was sort of appointed by the city hall in that little town to make records of all the Jewish people and so forth, and their births, their deaths, and, so forth. And that from those things he learned that his family had been in Russia for many hundreds of years. Of course, all those things are lost now. So it was Glachman, but as the grandchildren grew up, it was always very difficult for the teachers in school to pronounce CH. In America, it's very, sort of a German guttural sound. So they started to make out of the H a K, and gradually I did too, and all the grandchildren, without any legal, changing in a court or anything. And so my father came up and met my mother, and she consented. They consented to be married, and they did. And it was always a struggle, a very, very hard struggle to make ends meet. And you want to close it for a minute? My father was never religious, never Orthodox, because he felt very bitterly about the fact that he had a very bright mind. He was very bright, and he wanted to go to school in Europe. When he came here, when he came to the States, he was about 21 or 23, and but so before that, he had wanted very badly to go to some secular schools and learn, about the world, the Enlightenment. I think the movement was on at that time. And the rabbis said, that all a Jewish boy had to know, especially one who they were so poor, they were tailors and so forth, just know the prayers and so forth, that's it. So he was very bitter that he never had a chance to get too much education. But he was very bright. He always knew politics. He always knew people very well, psychology of people. He was always, he managed to save enough money to buy. He always worried about security because of his early childhood. So he saved penny by penny and bought a house with his brother in a partnership, and always very, very conservative about spending money because of his early childhood. But he managed it very, very nicely. So he was never Orthodox. And my mother, she had been taught the prayers in Hebrew, and her background was to keep a very kosher home, which she did, and my father accepted the fact that in the house it was very kosher. Outside he could do what he wanted to, and he never smoked, so he didn't have to worry about smoking on the Sabbath. And so so this was the arrangement. And then my father was very, very, very proud of coming to the United States, and he became naturalized as soon as he possibly could after 5 years. And he and several other men from his town founded a lodge, a society, which was called not by the name of his little town, which was Swinoch, Swinoch, the little town where he was born. It wasn't called by that name, it's called by a name very, another little town very close to it, called Ochova, Horchiver. It's called Ochova Young Men's Benevolent Society. Even when they became 85, 90 years old, it was still called Young Men's. And I still have my father's little pin, which he wore on his lapel from the orphanage. If you wanted to put in an album or something, I could give it to you. And I feel I can part with it. And my mother, she was not so sociable. But she was tired after she kept the house very clean, and she had a lot of washing to do, and baking and cooking, and she was very tired, and at the end of the day she would like to just sit near the window and look out, and she didn't care to go downstairs and participate in these discussions. She wasn't interested. And I often used to go down, and I was younger, I used to go downstairs and listen to the men argue and talk, and I loved it. Everybody said I looked like my father exactly, and my sister looked like my mother. So my father was very proud of being an American, and the democracy, the voting. He never missed a voting in his life until he was way old. In North Miami Beach, he was still grandfather taken in the car to the voting booth until the year that he passed away. He voted all his life. He was so proud to have the privilege. So he had no sons, just the two of us, and two girls. So he pinned all his hopes on me. He was only anxious for me to be a teacher. And he said, you don't have to learn any Hebrew, you don't have to go to Hebrew school, you don't have to learn any English, only English, and just be proficient, and all that. And he was very proud of me when I went to Hunter College. Hunter College at that time was a very good college, and you had to be in the upper 10% of your class to be admitted to Hunter. It was free, all free, the books were free, and all that. But since they had this outreach programs, and they accepted so many people of lower standards, so many students, and it became part of New York City University. It used to be all by itself. It wasn't a private university, but somehow it had a different standing with the city government. So its standards, Barbara tells me, its standards have gone down very much. But she told Jerry, she said my aunt went to Hunter when Hunter was really a very good college. And so my father was so proud of me, and I was the first one in the whole family that went to college. And I always got good marks. I studied. College did not come easy to me. I had to study very hard to get good marks. In certain subjects, I was very good, but certain subjects eluded me. I would have made Phi Beta Kappa if I had a little better marks in mathematics and one other subject I forget what the chemistry or physics. But in my major, which was romantic languages, I got very good marks. I was very good in English. I was very good in logic. Very surprisingly, I got very good marks in logic, and I couldn't grasp higher mathematics very well. It was very strange. Anyway, when I came out, when I came out, It was the beginning of the Depression, and they didn't want to hire any teachers, and they were very, very, very strict, and they had to find some excuse, for eliminating many people. Although my marks were very, very high, but they detected a slight foreign accent. I mean, I had a Brooklyn accent, not really a foreign accent. Maybe, if I had come from another state like New Jersey or some of the other states, you would talk differently there. Even New Jersey, which is so close to New York, but you talk a little differently. Anyway, they said, I couldn't be a teacher because that man was a great blow to my father. My mother didn't care so much, but my father was very generous. And then the Department of Welfare was starting in New York City. There was a depression, and they were taking college grads, no matter what their major was. So I heard about it and I applied, and they took me. I was there for 14 years. Of course, I had many experiences as a social worker or social investigator, whatever you want to call it. And that's a story by itself. And my father was a little appeased by that because it had tenure, and it was a civil service job, and I got a month's vacation instead of 2 months, which he would have liked for the summer, he always said. And so he was a little appeased by that, and he was, it was, pretty good. My sister made a nice marriage, and he didn't want for anything. He wasn't rich, but he had enough. And my father, when he retired, he got Social Security, and he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that every month there was a check in the mailbox. That he didn't work for, because he worked all his life since he was 11 years old, and couldn't believe it. And then his union started to give him a small pension too. And the first they had ever done that, a small pension of $50 a month, but it meant something too. And so that was about all along that line. Granted, but in those days, I mean, especially to my father, it was just overwhelming, overpowering. I mean, to get a check in the mailbox every month for not working, because in this sweatshop, especially being a person with a curvature of the spine and that brought other things, and in the sweatshop, it wasn't like it was a tailor. He was able to make a whole suit of clothes, an overcoat, a jacket, and all that. He had work for himself, but it was too risky. At one time he tried it, but it was financially it was too risky to do that. So all of the people that he knew who ran it would go into these sweatshops, and they would do what they called section work. He worked in a place where they made boys' jackets, and he was what they called a pocket maker. He took the small pieces of material and sewed it onto the jacket, and each person had to keep up with the other person. if you had a big pile in your machine, the foreman would come around and he'd say, look, you're not, it was just like conveyor belt. You're not keeping up with the other workers. They're giving it to you and you're not giving it to the other person. You know, you're not going fast enough. So they couldn't even take the time to go to the bathroom all day long because they were afraid it would pile up. And jobs were very scarce and you couldn't risk losing the job. So you had to work very, very hard. And the hours were hard too. The unions were not as strong as they were later on. And so the hours were long, the pay was little. And then during the Depression, you couldn't even work the whole week. So they divided the week, and you'd go to the union hall and you'd try to get 2 days a week. And it was very, very hard. I never knew that. I never knew that as much, you know, as I know, you know, as later on I found out. But my father had a life insurance policy, which he borrowed on to, you know, and things were very tough. And now I realize that lots of times that my parents, you know, didn't speak, and they gave us, you know, we didn't realize that, you know, my sister and I, you know, they didn't let on, you know, what would they say? You know, you're eating it, you're not, you know, they wouldn't say that. But things were bad until the United States ended the war around 1939. And the war began in England and all that with the Germans. Then things started to perk up because during wars, it's always like that, you know, the demand, people are sent to the army, and the people who remain get work, and because the other people are away, and unfortunately, this is how it works. So then he started to get full days, full weeks work, and the Depression was over. So this is how things went on. Yeah. Well, the years went by, and I was a social worker for the Department of Welfare in New York City. And because there were very, very many interesting things that happened. As I said before, it was during the Depression, and people lost their jobs and had to apply for public assistance. And also, about that time, for some reason, which I can't remember right now, Puerto Rico, which belonged to the United States, swarms of Puerto Ricans began to come mostly into New York City. And they were very, very poor in Puerto Rico. And they came in, and immediately they needed public assistance. They didn't have very much of a background of working. I think they were mostly agricultural workers. New York City was industrialized. So they were unskilled and they couldn't find work. So there was a time the mayor was LaGuardia, and they started the welfare department. People were starving. People were being thrown out in the streets. You walk down the street and people's furniture was one after the other. Was on the street. There were just few pieces of furniture on the street. And something had to be done. So they started the Bureau of Department of Welfare, and they needed people with college degrees. I mean, they had them, but they hadn't. They didn't have people with college degrees. They would have taken people with high school diplomas, but they had enough people who were unemployed and to take them. So they did, and they had a great deal of in-service training with psychology and so forth. And so I got this job, and as I said, I went to the different homes and heard the different stories and came back and gave either emergency assistance for people who were ill and or were about to be thrown out of their apartments and so forth and so on. And I feel that I did the job with a great deal of sympathy. I got to know that sometimes people, when they're given a little authority, it goes to their heads, and it's sort of not all people, of course, but a great many people that I knew, and they used it to sort of make them feel superior to the people who are getting assistance. But I feel proud of myself that I didn't. I always thought, there, but for the grace of God, go I. I always had that feeling. Maybe it's self-praise, but this is the way I felt. I felt that as much as I possibly could within the regulations, rules and regulations of the Department of Welfare. A little sympathy goes a long way when people are in need. It's your attitude, how you're doing. And anyway, so I worked. And one day, and I lived at home. In those days, it wasn't fashionable for unmarried girls, or even young men for that matter, to move out as soon as they were 18 or something, move out and get their own apartment. So I lived at home, and of course there were tensions and conflicts as you grow older with your parents, different generations and so forth, which sometimes are difficult, and sometimes it's better to move out and be on your own, but at that time it wasn't done. I contributed to the household, my salary, a great deal of my salary and so forth. And coincidentally, it just happened to be that we were moving, my family and I were moving, and because the house that my father had with his brother was taken over by the city, and we had to move. And my uncle went down to Florida, where his son had settled, and so he didn't have a problem, but we had a problem of moving because my sister had married Uncle Phil, and he was in the army, and she got pregnant, and she had Barbara, and so my sister and Barbara and I and my parents were in the apartment, so we needed a big apartment. So my father went looking for it, and he found an apartment, a house with a big apartment available. And apartments were very scarce at that time. And it just happened to be 1 block away from where this young man was living. So we became friendly, and he invited me to his house, and I resumed my acquaintanceship with his wife and so forth, and when we moved, our radio, we had a big console radio. There was no television yet in those days, and our big console radio was on the blink when we moved. So I happened to tell this young man, his name was Al Wilner, Willen, Al Willen. I happened to tell him which technician in the neighborhood would be a good man to go to have this radio fixed. And he said, you know, I used to work in the federal government with a young man who, on his time off, you know, did moonlighting. He was a whiz at fixing radios and everything else. And he lived in the Bronx. Lived in the Bronx? It's a borough of New York City. And like once a month we would invite him to dinner. And any appliance was on the blink, we always fixed it. He said, so when next time he comes, I'll send him over. So the next time he came, we had just moved in, and I was painting the kitchen chairs and table, and I was in a house dress, and my sister was taking care of Barbara. Barbara was about a year old, and she was running around. She was a little over a year. She was walking already. And the house was in a turmoil, you know. My mother hadn't been well for some time, you know. She couldn't do too much, and my father was still working. And here comes a knock at the door, and Maurice walks in. And he was very handsome, and he dressed immaculately. He always looked so nice. He's so changed now. He doesn't care about clothes or anything. But I never really was a clothes horse, what they call a clothes horse. I never really dressed so fashionably. But he loved clothes. And he walked in, and he looked at the radio, and he said something that he would come back or something. And do it next week or something like that. And he went out, and he went back to his friend, and he was supposed to be there for dinner, you know. And he said to him, whose little girl is that? And Alan said, you know, this is Sarah, and I was a little girl, Barbara. Her husband is in the army, and Rose is not married. So Grandpa said, well, I'd like to meet her. Could you call her and ask her if she'd come up for dessert and tea and so forth? And they said, surely. So they called me. And well, I quickly took a shower and dressed and went up there. And then we had tea, and he asked me for a day. This is how it began, and we were married within 3 months. Because Grandpa said he's not going to make the trip from the Bronx to Brooklyn. Very, very much. It was a big trip, you know, the train and all. So we got married, and Sarah, of course, was married before then, and Phil was in the army at that time, and he proposed to Sarah, and he said, you know, the very next furlough that he could get, a 3-day furlough, they would get married, and he didn't know when that would be, but that she should be ready. So we went, and she bought, you saw the picture, a lovely 2-piece suit. She didn't want to get anything elaborate, you know, like a train or anything like that. And because it was wartime, and you know, and they couldn't invite people to, you know, because he didn't know when he would get the 3-day furlough. So she got this lovely white suit and white shoes and a white hat with a veil. And then he got a furlough, and they had a little synagogue in the neighborhood. And they just had like a kiddush, you know, a sweet table, and they got married. and then she continued to live at home. They just went for 3 days, to somewhere, I don't remember, and then she continued to live at home, and then she had Barbara, and we all lived, together with the baby. We took her to the hospital when she had to go to the hospital. Bill wasn't around, and so my mother and I took her to the hospital, and I ran downtown and bought a layette for the baby, and Barbara was such a pretty baby. She had peaches and cream complexion and blonde hair and blue eyes. She was and I was so crazy about her. I mean, we hadn't had a baby in the family for 20 odd years, and I was so crazy. This was the craziest aunt you ever saw. Everybody in the office would commented about her. I just couldn't stop talking about her. And then she was about a year and a half when I got married, and then Phil came home from the army, and then they bought that little house in Valley Stream. That was their first little house, and they have it ever since. I mean, imagine all these years. It's let me see. We just had our 40th wedding anniversary, March the 3rd, and she was married before. She must have the house about, 42, 43 years or so, always in the same house. And she said she never, as far as she knows, she never saw it. Never leave that house. It's just too many memories. Too many memories. So, and then we moved into the, in the neighborhood. We got an apartment, a small apartment in the basement, sort of. And then Grandpa decided that he never liked New York anyway. He never liked a big city. So, on our honeymoon, we went through the national parks, and we landed up in California. And on my mother's side, that's her brother, mother, the cousins were partly in Chicago and partly in California. Gradually, they all moved out to California except Regina and Sam. Sam was a brother who still lives in Chicago. And we met, Grandpa met all the relatives, and he liked California. He figured, it's smaller than New York. So we came back, and we gave up the apartment, and we went to California. And apartments were very hard to get there, but we managed to get, with the help of, did you ever hear of Mr. Kudrowski, the artist who made our portraits? You know our portraits,
yes.
don't you? Yeah, he was living out there with his family. He had moved out from New York. So he had some connections, and they had put up, some builder had put up something like what they called Quonset huts. Very like barracks, almost like army barracks, a little one-family, little apartments. Very, very primitive. But he managed to get them for us. They were really for veterans coming out of the war, but he managed to get them for us. And we lived there for 2 years. And Grandpa took a leave of absence from his government job. and he had the privilege of coming back within 5 years. So he tried to get settled there, but he had to go in a very big way there and make a big appliance store or a big something. And it wasn't successful. He tried with a friend of his to go into business. It wasn't too successful. And then he went to work for somebody and he didn't like it. And I was very lonesome for my parents and for Sarah. Your dad was born in LA, and I wanted to show him to the family. If Grandpa had been successful, we probably would have stayed there, but he wasn't, you know. So I insisted that we come back, and I was very close to my parents, and so we came back, and we stayed in my mother's house. She had this large apartment. By that time, Sarah and Barbara had moved out and gotten out. So we stayed in my mother's apartment for a while until an apartment upstairs became vacant. And my father owned the house. It was a 4-family house. And the city had taken away the other house, which he had in partnership with his brother. His brother had gone down to Florida. And then he scurried around and found another house in another neighborhood, the neighborhood where Al Willen lived, and they had a big apartment there. So we moved in with them. We stayed for a while, and until the apartment upstairs was vacant, and then we lived there. I don't remember how many years. It must have been about 1948. Didn't you? It was about 1948 until about 1960 when we moved down to Florida. And Grandpa and Grandma, they lived downstairs, we lived upstairs, of course, and Grandpa, you know, helped with the maintenance of the thing. And then Grandpa sold the house and we all went down to Florida. Helen was 8 years old, she entered the 3rd grade. Her dad had finished his first year in high school, Tilden High School. I remembered that there was a newsstand at 42nd Street in Broadway where they had newspapers from all over the world. And I suddenly said to Robert, I said, why don't you get a copy of each of the newspapers and compare them, you know, the different editorials, this and this, whatever you want to do with them. I said, that would be different. And he said, you're right. So he said, they had stopped the car. So we stopped the car. You could find parking space around Times Square, New York, 42nd Street, New York Way. And we found it. And he gave me some money and gave us some money. And we went to the newsstand and we got all the different newspapers. And they had them right there in America. They had all the different newspapers from Israel. And I think I gave Robert the album that he made.
Yeah.
And it was just a talk at the school. He gave a history of all the different parties, you know, that were in existence at that time. He got all, but one time I remember Robert had to make, in Hebrew class, and he was so interested in Israel and Hebrew and all, even when he was that young, when he was going to junior high school, he remarked, I think I heard him say one time that even at that time he was thinking of going to live in Israel someday.